In today's episode, we're talking all about how to select materials and decor elements for your home that match your style and lifestyle needs. A single material choice can completely transform how a room feels and functions. So whether you're planning a major renovation or a simple refresh, I'm sharing the exact process I follow for each of my own makeovers. I hope to help you feel more confident in your design and material decisions and ultimately get you closer to designing your dream home. Hello guys, welcome back to the With My Own Two Hands podcast. I'm your host, McKenna Lee, and if you have been following along over the last 5 episodes here and over on my YouTube channels where I share tons of my projects, you know that I have very much been pregnant for 9 months, obviously. And I am no longer pregnant. We had our baby boy. He arrived at the beginning of June. And this is the first time I'm filming the podcast postpartum. So I'm officially 2 weeks postpartum now. It's just an amazing new chapter. I have a whole birth vlog over on my vlog channel that I'll leave linked for you if you are any way, shape, or form interested in that or knowing more about our birth story. And we are just so happy and so over the moon, just getting adjusted to a new kind of way of life. Kinsley is always here when I'm filming my 6-pound multi-poo. She has been through some adjustments. You know, she's trying to get used to the new world, and it's just amazing. It's been a dream of ours to become parents for a really long time. And now that it's finally here, it's almost surreal. So if you're interested, go check out the birth vlog. Follow along on my other channels if you want to know more about our lives and, more behind the scenes. I came up with this episode idea kind of by something that I had to fix and a mishap that we had in our kitchen renovation. I tried my hardest to prepare everything that I possibly could for our kitchen renovation and just like my other projects in general before the baby arrived. It was kind of like the calmness of our lives still. I was obviously still pregnant, very pregnant at that point, and I couldn't do a ton, but what I could do is just line everything up in terms of like ordering everything that I needed or picking and choosing things that we needed for the renovation and just making sure that everything was teed up, ready to go, that the contractors wouldn't wait on me because I just didn't know how I would feel giving birth. I didn't know how much downtime I would take. I didn't know how I would feel coming out of it. I didn't know how well everything would go. So it was all new to me. I'd never had a baby before. So I wanted to prepare as much as possible beforehand. One of the things that we did and needed to decide on was the countertops for our kitchen. And that requires you to go to stone yards and walk them, literally looking at slabs and slabs and slabs of stone. I knew I wanted a natural stone, so we were going to the slab yards and actually looking at these huge slices of beautiful pieces. I love that process, so I really wanted to take our time and find the perfect one. So about a month ago, the beginning of May, Romeo and I spent an entire day going from place to place looking for the perfect stone. I had a few inspiration pictures of direction I wanted to go for the stone. The palette I wanted to find, I wanted a lighter base with lots of interesting warm toned veins in it. I wanted it to be, like really veiny. And I also wanted it to be either a quartzite or a high quality granite that was going to be super durable for our kitchen. So we set out on a mission. We spent all day. We went to tons of different slab yards and we found a beautiful piece. It was actually a dolomite, which is kind of in between a marble and a quartzite. It has similar characteristics to both. It has some downfalls, heat resistant and things like that. It also is better than marble. I did not want to put marble in our kitchen. It stains. It's not durable. I just personally just don't want to go down that path. So we found it. It was beautiful. I loved it. We put it on hold, left, walked away, gave all of our information. I also have a whole vlog about this situation as well, if you'd like to check that out. But long story short, the lady that helped us at this particular place didn't even bother to call me, told me on the phone that she didn't think I was serious, and deleted the holds and sold our stone to someone else. I was not happy. I was actually very, very, very mad. I just was dumbfounded. Well, I called for a specific reason. I needed to know the thickness of the stone specifically, like down to the millimeter because we think we are going to have to raise some of the cabinetry up. I wanted to ask her just to measure it and send me a picture of the measurement. And it just went downhill from there to find out that we just no longer had our stone. That was our first kind of mishap or like setback with the kitchen renovation so far. And I kind of should have known from the beginning because it seemed a little rocky to begin with, just with working with this particular person in this particular place. So I kind of should have like picked up on the cues. At the very least, I would have expected a phone call, if she had all my information. So that happened, lost the stone. We needed to start over. But now I was, like a week and a half postpartum. This just happened a few days ago. Thank goodness my mom was here. Romeo and I spent a few hours going to some more places, some different places, and found another beautiful stone that was actually cheaper. So it was all a blessing in disguise. I think I'm choosing to look at it now positively because now we've found a new stone and we're on the right track again. And the fabricators have come out and measured and made the templates for our stone. And so we're back on track. We just kind of got, maybe 2 days behind, in that sense, which is really not a big deal. But when we were looking for stone, I had this idea for today's episode because Romeo and I were really kind of almost polarizing our choices, if that kind of came out right. It was like we both were gravitating towards stones that were really busy and had a lot of interest and a lot of veins and a lot of movement and just like overall statement piece stones. And then we were also really interested into this other group of calm and interesting and beautiful but classy. And it's hard when you go and you look for materials for your home and you're picking materials and finishes and decor even. I always find that sometimes I am attracted to completely different things. When we were looking at these stones, I was like, they're going to give us completely different kitchens. Just one choice, one thing that we needed to decide on is going to impact the overall design of our kitchen in such a crazy way that I was like, oh my gosh, we have to do a podcast episode about this because I want to talk about materials and finishes and how they do impact your space so much. Like how to make all the little decisions for your room makeovers and when you're doing your home and you're making those decisions, like how do you go about it? Because I'm standing in the middle of a stone yard, like I'm playing tug of war with myself. I'm like, man, on this hand, if we went with a more dramatic statement stone, here are the pros and cons kind of thing. And Romeo and I just kind of like worked through it. We were like, okay, if we go with a more statement stone, it's going to be the statement, the focal point of our kitchen. It's going to have a wow moment. So when you walk in, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, wow. Like it's going to be beautiful. These stones are beautiful, obviously, but it's going to be more in your face, right? And it also has a lot of color in it. So it may restrict me on some other choices that I was making in the kitchen, or I would have to feed off of that particular stone. We would be a little more limited. I didn't anticipate the stone being the focal point thus far, so now we're entering a world where now the stone is the hero of the kitchen. And I didn't necessarily know if I wanted that. The con of doing that, in addition to being restricted on like maybe colors or things that I can add into the kitchen, was also we have to think about resale always in some form. You live there, right? Like designed for you, designed for your family and your home, what you like. But, kind of in the back of your head, just know like, oh, am I going to do something like so crazy that it's going to kind of hinder resell? Like, is someone else going to like this? Am I planning on, now if you're planning on selling your home in like a year or 2 years and you're actually making upgrades to sell it, be cautious. Go somewhat safe. I would. But if you plan like us to live in a home for a decade or, like a long time, build the home for you, choose the finishes and materials that you love, because you have to live there for so long. Not that these stones were that crazy, but like it could hinder someone loving the kitchen or wanting to replace the countertops. And that may be something that, you lose out on the sale of your home. So that's another con, right? If I go too bold and too statement, it could not be universally well liked by potential future buyers. So it's just something that I thought in my head, maybe a pro or a con, or, a little bit of both. It would also add a lot more energy into the space. The kitchen is a very energetic place by far, but adding such a statement stone and just a boldness to the space is going to change the energy of the space. So then on the flip side of that, we were looking at a lot of the stones that were more calm. One in particular is a quartzite, really durable, loved it. That was actually what I was on the mission to find, was a quartzite. It's called Taj Mahal. Now, Taj Mahal has gotten really popular in the last, I say, handful of years. They're pretty readily available at every slab yard in some version. Not every stone is going to be identical, but this group of stone is called Taj Mahal. It's a very sandy, taupey color. It's very durable because it's quartzite. It's a very beautiful, calm, safe option. So they're putting it in a lot of homes, and some are a lot more subtle than others. And when we were at this place, we actually found a Taj Mahal that had a lot more veins in it. And I was like, oh, this is really beautiful. It had more of a warm vein. There was more contrast between the background of the stone and the actual veins that went through it. And I hadn't seen that in a Taj Mahal yet. And we had looked at probably, like at that point, probably 30 to 40 different slabs of Taj Mahal. And that one, I was like, oh, this feels good. This feels like I'm going to create a very calm oasis of a kitchen, like a very calming, classy, very like you just walk in and you feel good about the space that you're in. It's beautiful, but it's not like bam in your face, like here's this statement stone. We were kind of in that realm, and I'm like, man, one decision can so drastically change the entire vibe of an entire room. When you're using that large of a material and it's taking up that large of a space, it has to be right. It has to be something that, you're gonna love for a long time. And so when I kept thinking about the Taj Mahal, it gave me the veins I wanted. It gave me the warmth that I wanted, the interest and the movement, but it also gave me the calm. It gave me the resell value, like easier to resell later on. It gave me just that peacefulness that I think that we really want. And I always lead with in design. So every room that I create, if I can create a calm, inviting space, I've won. I feel like I have like checked the box on like, this was a good one, and nothing really that I do is like really bold or in your face, because that to me isn't promoting that sense of calm for my own home. So that's how I design to begin with. So I kind of just had to recheck in with myself and be like, McKenna, you literally design calm interiors. Like, that's what you love. Why are you going to go and put something like loud or super busy in a space? It's not you. And I wouldn't love it like long term. You clearly know which one we chose. And we're moving forward, and I'm really, really excited about it. So with the stone selection, that was the last final puzzle piece. I guess they already finished all the material selections, but this was now, because of the mishap and the setback of losing one, this now completed all of the materials for our kitchen. And we had to make so many material and finish selections throughout the process. And I have some like go-to things that I always do every time I start my room makeovers. I go through this kind of process to help me get started, to make sure it's cohesive with the rest of my house. It's really going to give me the look that I really want. So in today's episode, I'm going to share my process for figuring out what materials, finishes, even decor, all the way through everything from the structural portion of your room. So nothing structural. You've got like an empty room now that you need to add the interest and the character and the colors and the decor and all of that. So from the walls being finished forward, I want to share with you guys my process and also just kind of guide you through the different things that you can consider when you're starting a room makeover. So let's think for a second like a kitchen and all of the little things that it needs. It needs flooring, it needs paint, color and sheen. It needs plumbing fixtures and tiles and cabinetry, paint or stain. It needs countertops. It needs tile. I may have been repeating some of them. It needs curtains if you're going to do that. We happen to be doing also a eat-in kitchen. So we also need a dining room table and chairs that in a particular material and type. We need a rug. We need, like all of those, lighting, all of the things that come, and all of those things are decisions, and they all have particular materials based on what your style is, which is my very first tip, is start with your style. This is how you're going to figure out what those materials are and how they fit into your style, because different styles literally have a list of materials that are popular or most common within that style. So like for me, like being like more vintage and on that side of things, I have a very like specific materials list that's most common in my style. That's going to be very different to someone that likes like slick and modern. So starting with your style is always going to be your jumping off point. And what I would recommend is pulling out your inspiration photos or going to your Pinterest, wherever you've been saving inspo pics for your home or your particular room that you're going to be starting, pulling them all up and dissecting them. Start to not look at the room as a whole and start to look at the room in pieces, in material. If you're going to be working on a bedroom, let's say, start to look like, what is the headboard? What's the bed made out of? What material is it? What kind of bedding do they have? Linen, silk, cotton. It could be patterned. It could be a double duvet, insert into the duvet cover to make it really fluffy and cloudy. Or if your style is more modern, maybe it's a tight quilt or a tight coverlet that there's no volume to it. Your style is going to so drastically affect the materials, that you're going to choose and even how they're displayed into a room. And then what type of material is the dresser, the side tables, what kind of rug do they have in the space? Is it fluffy? Is it low pile? Is it shaggy? Is it patterned? Is it solid? What is it? What kind of lighting do they have? Is it metal or wood or crystal or, what is it? And start to dissect the room in that way. So you're really looking at particular portions and particular pieces, starting to understand all the little elements and the little components that are making up the whole room. So not only do materials that we use in our room makeovers matter, but also the quality of those materials. And a big thank you to Cozy Earth for sponsoring this episode. You can get 30% off at cozyearth.com/cozyxo and using code cozyxo at checkout. We have been having much warmer days as summer is in full swing, like 90 plus degree days every day. And I actually like to swap out our bedding depending on the weather, opting for a material that's cooler to the touch and more breathable. Cozy Earth sheets are celebrated for their softness, breathability, and temperature regulating fabrics, making them the perfect choice for this time of year and year round. Their sheet sets come in 17 beautiful colors. You can easily pair your bedding with your other decor elements in your bedroom, and they only get softer with every wash. All bedding and bath products come with a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty, so you can try out the products for yourself and really get to experience the quality and softness. This summer, transform your home into a sanctuary with Cozy Earth. Get 30% off at cozyearth.com/cozyxo using code cozyxo at checkout, and tell them that I sent you in the post-purchase survey to get a free pair of Cozy Earth socks. So I pulled a couple of pictures so that we could dissect them together. So if you're watching on the YouTube channel, I'll put in some pictures on the screen as I talk about them. Here was one that I pulled up. This is like a little sink area in a kitchen. And this one stuck out to me because I was like, look at how much is happening in such a small space, because they've got so many elements, and every one of those elements was a decision that was made for that space. This is like a little corner. It has a sink. So it has a farmhouse sink. So we've got a white, maybe fire clay or ceramic, could be covered cast iron as well. We've got countertops that are lighter in color but have like some veins in it. I can't really see it, but I can see some veins when the countertop, kind of comes down on the sides. We've got light colored wood cabinetry, so it's not painted. It's solid wood, it's real wood, and it's a very light, could be like a English chestnut kind of like color. Is that the one that I used to use a lot? English something. I used to use that stain. I used to use a lot. And even all the detail and the decisions that were made about the cabinetry door fronts is huge. I mean, like every door looks so different and it's so beautiful. Like the drawers up top are very different than the doors down below, and then are very different than the side kind of doors that go up the pantry wall. And then they have like open shelves that are going across in the same wood tone. All of the walls that I can see are all patterned with wallpaper, and it's beautiful and I love it. And so it's got some busyness to it. It's got some movement. That is probably the busiest portion of the room, so they kind of picked one busy element, one patterned element for that space. It might be brass or copper, like a little rod that goes across. So they brought in a metal element and then paired that with matching interesting hardware for the cabinetry. They've got some green. This is just like a little cute little space. But if you start to look at it that way, and you're like, we're picking apart the elements, they have wallpaper, they have a lighter color to keep the whole space really bright and airy. They have light wood cabinetry and shelving. Did I say copper already, or brass? I'm 2 weeks postpartum has gotten my memory and my brain, like my short-term memory is like out the window. Like I'm constantly being like, what time did the baby eat? If I hadn't been writing it down, I would not remember. Like 2 hours goes by really, really fast. Anyways, so patterned wallpaper, light wood cabinets, light stone on the countertops and the sink, and then it's got brass or copper in the metal that's brought in, and then they've got some greenery and stuff like that. I also pulled a picture of a bathroom, and I get so frustrated now when I look on Pinterest or really anywhere. I don't know what's real and what's AI anymore, and it frustrates me so much because sometimes I'll see some beautiful room and I'm like, oh, the dead giveaway is like a big pot of big flowers and hydrangeas. Like the flowers are always a giveaway for me, whether it's like real or fake, really. So sometimes I'm like, is that real or is that like something about the fake rooms? I'm just like, I'm disappointed. This one, I'm not too sure if it's real or fake. It could be either way. But this one is of a bathroom. It has a separate shower and bathtub area. I love the elements in it, and I think they did a good job of playing with the color, using the color wheel to help them pick colors, which I'm going to talk about too. They've got this like wood that looks more orangey toned to me, and it's going up the wall and then the beams on the ceiling. So it's not the full bathroom, but it's just up one wall, kind of like off to the side of the bathtub, and it's really beautiful. And then the beams. So since the wood had more of an orangey stain, a tint to it, they went with a green tile in the shower. Orange and green are opposite each other on the color wheel. And when in doubt, I always look at that. I always go back to the color wheel and I take a look at it and I'm like, okay, what is opposite purple? I don't really ever decorate purple. I don't know why purple came to my mind. Sometimes I do like design in primary colors. The one time I did do that is out in our pool area. The pool itself that makes the water look a certain color is very like California blue. I had all these red geraniums around the pool area that we were kind of like repositioning. And so I had blue and red already. And I was like, I might as well go with like a primary color palette and do blue, red, and yellow. And so that was my primary colors. And so I put yellow floaties in the pool, and I had like yellow towels, and I just kind of like utilized the color wheel to help me decide on what other color I could introduce, because I could have easily just done more blue or more red. And I thought it was more interesting and prettier that I did, utilize the color wheel. So when in doubt, do that. If you already have like a color in your space or a color that you're trying to work with, just look at the color wheel. What's opposite of it? What could be a complementing color? So to clarify the color wheel for these colors, this particular green is opposite orange, but like a true green opposite is red. So that's why you see red and green at Christmas. They're opposite the color wheel. So this particular space also has some other wood tones that are in the space. They have like kind of like a gray white marble brick laid flooring, brass elements. They've got everything has like a circular like look to it. Globes on the lights are more rounded, the oval shape of the mirror on the wall. And so they really tried to play with that being consistent throughout the space. Shape is also something that you can kind of like call out in the spaces that you see. But this is a really pretty bathroom, I thought. So once you've gone through your style, you've pulled your inspiration pictures and you've dissected what in those inspiration pictures are the materials and how they're being used, the next thing that I would definitely do is figure out if there's anything that you have to use in the space that you already have. You're redoing your dining room. You don't want to get rid of your dining room table, so you're going to use it. What material is it? Is it wood? What color is it? Or maybe it's not wood. Also, like must-haves. Is there something that you absolutely love that you want to bring in the space? Start with what you know, I guess is a better way of saying like your must-haves, right? Start with what you definitely know you want or you already have, and then either take a picture of it or write it down on your Pinterest board or whatever and start building your materials out. So starting there is definitely what I would do and what I always do for my own makeovers. The third thing that I would do is something that I always do in my own home is I try and look at my other spaces in my house, a room that's already been designed and already been thought about. I try and see what of that space and what of that design in that other room I can pull into my new space that I'm working on. In our home, one of the first spaces that we redid was actually the room that I'm sitting in right now. And this is the very first room you walk into when you walk into our home. It's the entryway and the formal living room. And I sit in here the most when I record my podcast, but it is such a nice area. I actually really, really enjoy this space. So when we redid it, we chose a very specific paint color for the walls and restored the beams back to their original color, which is a deep, deep Kona warm wood color. When we moved into the kitchen renovation, we did the same color palette. We did the same color on the walls because those rooms are pretty much joining. You can see from one to another. So I wanted to keep it consistent and it's a common area of the house. The paint color and then also the beams, because I wanted the beams throughout the entire house to be the same tone so that the entire house felt like a consistent house. Like it was a house that was thought about flowing from room to room. Now, I've always said when I design that I always want each makeover that I do or each room in a house to be like sisters, not twins. That's really because I wanted each room to have its own personality, but know that they're related, if that makes sense. So when we did the bedroom makeover for our primary bedroom on the bottom floor, we did the same beams on the ceiling in the same color and incorporated some of the same tone of furniture like we have in the entryway, but did a completely different look in the room in terms of like paint color. In this room, it's very light and airy and natural. And in that room, it's dark and moody, like the darkest mossy green color that I could find kind of thing. It also has different flooring in there, so it kind of promotes this like different look in that space too. So they're like sisters that have completely different personalities. Think of your home like that. Think of the elements that you can pull from one room into the other that will help you make those material choices. And maybe it is paint color or stain color or a piece of furniture in tone. Now you've already like gone through your style and you know what your style kind of encompasses. And then you've also figured out what your must-haves were, what you were already keeping in the space or definitely going to want. And now you know from another room in your house what you can use. So you're starting to build this materials list, and we really haven't made any new decisions. Like we're just leveraging what we already have and we already know to our advantage. The fourth thing that I would definitely pay attention to is functionality. What a room is going to do for you, how it's going to be used, is definitely going to affect the materials that are selected for the space. Let's say, for instance, like purely just paint option, paint color, paint sheen is going to be very different in a bathroom than in a living room, like I am right now, because they actually need to function differently. You need a higher sheen in a bathroom, a more durable finish because it has a lot of moisture in the space. And in a living room, you don't have that. You don't shower in your living room. So you don't have that moisture that's in the air. So that is like a sheen decision, of your paint. I always like to go higher sheen in the bathroom. Satin is the lowest I would go, satin or gloss. But in living rooms and even in our bedroom, I did much lower than that. I either do an eggshell or I do a matte finish. I like both. In here, I have an eggshell finish. It just adds that much more durability than a matte finish. It's not so dusty and chalky. Also, in terms of functionality, like a mud room would definitely have different materials than a living room would. In this living room, I've got, a light colored couch and a linen. I've got a, light colored rug, chairs that have cane wood and a lighter, colored like cushion. They would never stand up in a mud room, or they wouldn't have a couch in a mud room. But you know what I mean? Like the decisions about what type of material you're going to be using is definitely affected by the functionality of that space. Number 5 would be feeling. What kind of feeling do you want to evoke in that space? Going back to our countertop dilemma. On one hand, it's a statement stone is going to give us a very different feeling than, on the other hand, the calming one. We made that decision based on what feeling we wanted the space to have. And I wanted the space to be more calming and classy and classic and timeless. And we opted for that stone that gave us that feeling over one that was going to be more of a statement and have a wow factor. So how do you want your room to feel? Do you want it to be calm and inviting and warm? You're going to pick specific materials in order to do that. Or do you want it to be energetic and like wild and like have some like energy to it? You're going to pick specific materials in order to do that. Think of like a game room. A game room is like fun and it's got like, like elements like that. You could be loud. You could have like a little bar in your game room. It could have like crazy stuff. You could go like loud. You could do like a mural on the wall. You could have a lot of energy and a lot of color, but maybe you wouldn't do that in your living room, in your entryway that I'm sitting in right now. Maybe it's completely different vibes. What feeling do you want to evoke? What's going to happen in the space? And how can you support that by picking the right materials and the right finishes in order to do that? Number 6 would be focal point. This kind of goes back to that statement stone too. It's like, if I pick this statement stone, it's going to overpower everything else that I did in the space. It's now going to be the focal point of the room. Do I want that? What is the hero of the room? What material is it going to be made out of? Is it just a different kind of paint color? Like the room we're sitting in right now, I painted our fireplace this like dark milk chocolate color, and it's very much in contrast to the colors on the walls. So it stands out. It becomes the focal point in a subtle way, but still the focal point of the room. So what of your room is going to be the focal point? In our kitchen, I have a few, and it's still to be determined what really overpowers it, but my hood that's over our oven is definitely going to be a focal point because it's going to be also married with my vintage or antique, vintage 1920. Oh, we could be on the antique side of my chandelier. I think antique is 100 years and vintage is over 40 years, I think. Oh, don't quote me on that. That was just kind of pulled that out of my memory. My chandelier, crystal and brass chandelier that's going into the kitchen is from the 1920s. So that's going to sit in front of the hood, obviously, and you're going to see them as one. And so it's going to create this like just focal point in the whole kitchen. What's your focal point and what would you want to make that material out of? If it's a living room, is it your fireplace? Is it made out of stone, or is it a different color that you can paint it? If it's your bedroom, is it your bed frame? You know, what material is that made out of? How big is it is definitely determined on whether it's your focal point or not. And then number 7 is something that I just do all the time. With every makeover, I get to a certain point when I'm like, okay, what else does this space need in order to have it have character? What character can I add to the space? And that really comes from my own like design preference. I love character. I love detail. I love trim. I love molding. In this room particular that I'm sitting in, right behind me is our staircase. And the wall that was kind of underneath, the angled wall, was kind of bare. And I was like, it's missing something. It's missing character. So I did this wood treatment that I painted the same color as the wall. So it's very subtle, but it added so much more character and depth and interest to the stairway wall. And it just needed it. And sometimes you don't know what a space is going to need until you get there to that point. I don't make every finished decision up front. I actually can't. It's actually like impossible for my brain to do. I'm very visual. So sometimes you'll get to a point when you can step back from the space and you can be like, okay, what else does it need? What can I add to make it more interesting or have more character? And I've pretty much done that in every room. I've done it here. I'm already kind of doing it in the kitchen. I'm like, what else do you need? Like just taking it to the next level. I like things in odd numbers, and you talk about in design, they talk about like having things in threes, like multiples of threes. I just use it as a guide to, I want a material or a color to show up 3 times. Really, I do it in color. So for instance, like our fireplace in this room is that milk chocolate color. I also have that milk chocolate color on the front door. So that's 2 times that it's shown up. And I also have a darker piece of furniture in the front of the room that is in the same kind of dark wood color. And it's the only dark wood in this room except for the flooring. So that color is represented 3 times. So think about your room and try and pinpoint a particular color that is represented at least 3 times. I think you'll be able to like really balance a room like that and start to feel like it feels good in there to you. Like even in this room, I'm looking at like the brass and gold accents. I have the brass that's around the fireplace. I have the gold frames that are on the wall that kind of mimic the same thing. I would consider those the same. And I also have like these brass bottom coffee tables in front of me. So it's represented multiple times. Now, is a color or a material represented more than 3 times sometimes in my designs? Yes. And it's just all about balance. Is it too much? Just step back from it. Is it too many? Do I have too much brass? Do I have too much of that thing? And start to kind of like pull out and replace with something else. But for the most part, that's never really done me wrong. You know, as long as I've thought about it like that, like in threes, it's really helped me to design spaces. And finally, number 8 would be budget. Whatever budget you set, you're definitely going to be restricted in terms of material. Materials can be really, really, really expensive. I mean, we looked at like, let's just say the slabs and going to like look at countertops. We looked at stones that were like way out of budget. And then we looked at stones that were in our budget. And we did have to make compromises to get that look. And so you're always going to have the budget in mind. You just have to work around it and figure out what is in budget. What can you do with a space that's in budget? in terms of your materials and your finishes, I love to look for things secondhand at flea markets and things. That's my way of really saving on the budget of a space. I found pretty much all of our hardware for our kitchen cabinetry secondhand. I found them at flea markets or estate sales, and that's happened twice. That's just something that I like to look for because that's happened twice. I did that in the cottage. I found bags of hardware at estate sales. You could buy hardware for like $5+ each, and I'm getting a bag of them for $5. So think of ways that you can save on your materials that you're bringing into your space by shopping secondhand maybe, or upcycling something you already have to be more in line with the materials that you need for your new space. I'm a big believer that you can make any budget really work because I've done it. And I've thrifted and I've upcycled and I've transformed things that I already had, or I've looked on Facebook Marketplace for things that I could transform for my spaces. Even if you're doing a kitchen and like countertops, you have material options for every budget. You have to start somewhere and figure out what's going to work for you and your budget. And finally, what I'll say on that is that seeing everything in person is so important. If you're anything like me and is a visual person, you gotta get the things and you gotta bring them in the space. And that goes for everything from paint color, seeing it in the space with everything else at all times of day is so important because colors can change on you and you have to pick the right ones. If I'm buying something new, I will overbuy. Like I'll buy options, and I'm a big returner. I'm like, okay, I need to see it in the space. I will return this. So when in doubt, buy options to see in the space to really pick the right things, the right materials, the right decor, the right finishes, everything. So if you can buy and return, I would recommend. Stores are going to hate me, but I would totally recommend that because you've got to see it. You've got to have a starting point. I don't know. My mom has always been so amazing at like dreaming something up in her head and just knowing that it's going to look good. I'm like, I cannot do that. She wants to make decisions about like finishes before she even has walls. And I'm like, Mom, how? I cannot do that. Like I have to wait until a certain point and then I can make a decision. And even then it's like, am I making the right one? So I hope that my kind of process will help you in your next makeover or your next whole home kind of reno, and it gives you kind of a starting point. I think starting with your style and what you've already got and how you want your space to feel, all of those are so important, and I think that they're overlooked when we're trying to make material choices. We don't think about those things. We don't think about the process that we could go through to really help us figure it out. You could be two types of people. You could walk into an empty sterile room that's painted white and see all the possibilities and know what you want to do, or even be overwhelmed with all of the possibilities. Or you could walk into that same sterile room and be like, I don't even know where to start. I have nothing's coming to my mind. So I hope that these steps, if you follow these steps, it'll help you get in the right direction. We have a few design dilemmas that are definitely more on the material and style finishes side of things. So let's get into them. Amber wrote in, hello McKenna, I have a 1930s farmhouse with a large addition dilemma, the kind of dilemma one dreams to have. Background of the house, it was built by the guy that invented roller skates. When I read this, I was like, that's so cool. This was his hobby farm, and it originally included 2 properties. My husband and I bought the farmer's house, as it says on the original blueprints from 1936, while our neighbor bought the owner's home. So there were two separate homes on the property. The house itself is much more functional, with less bells and whistles than the main house. I've included some of these pictures so you can get a sense of the materials and design elements we want to use as a jumping off point. We're looking to do major renovations throughout the property, inside and out, so our dilemmas are never ending. But this is the one that keeps me up at night. I just do not know what to do with this gigantic addition that comes off the side of our original farmhouse. It's very big and cold and gives early 2000 vibes. I just cannot anymore. I share your sentiment towards white, so I would love to change the paint so it could feel more cozy and warm. I can never decide whether curtains are a good idea or not. These ceilings are tall, 15 feet. I'd love a ceiling treatment, and there's beadboard throughout the property, but I think the ceiling is too high to do that. It would look small, right? We have beams in the archway, but I don't love them. Quick backstory, brace your heart. When I read this originally, I broke my heart. Back in 2019, the original archway was crushed by a fallen oak tree. I bawled my eyes out in the backyard for a solid 20 minutes. Insurance paid to have it rebuilt, but the original design couldn't be replicated due to code updates. And while the new construction is beautiful, it just feels wrong for the home and makes me so sad. Girl, I would have sat there and cried with you. I would have been devastated. We love old homes for a reason. When we can't replicate it back to its original, or it's just gone, what was there was gone, it's just like so devastating. So I feel you. I would have sat there and cried with you. I was inspired by your lime wash fireplace. I did that in the cottage. So I've been looking into that, but I'm having such a hard time committing because we'll be contracting this work. And I'm afraid to make such a big investment without knowing I'm making good design choices. Because I feel like that's where we normally get to that point, right? It's like we have to make all of these decisions, but we just don't know. We don't know if it's going to look good. And I don't have a remedy for that. I even feel like that every time. With this entire kitchen renovation, you guys, I've been totally terrified. Is it going to look good? As much as I know about kitchen construction and cabinetry construction and materials and the practice that I've had kind of doing this type of work, I can envision a lot in my head. Kind of erring on the side of over 50% confident. I truly don't know. Like I too don't know. It's scary, especially when you're investing a lot of money. You're like, what if this doesn't work out and we spend all this money? And you kind of just have to go for it, and you kind of just have to have the tools at your fingertips to make the best decision that you can. And it's easy for me to say, like, you can always fix something, but when you're investing the money, that's not always the case. It's like, we already paid for it. We're not going to fix it right now. We have to like wait, it's hard. It's hard. Some things to consider. I think we can keep our couch. It's a love sack and really functional for our very big family, but I could change up the arms or backs to suit a different style and configure it any which way. A dark rug is kind of a must because we have kids and dogs, and a large dining room table, ideally seating 10. I absolutely love your style, the cottage, the LA house, all of it. I definitely lean towards moody, more masculine, organic style with a tinge of boho like plants and baskets. I think my struggle has been to achieve that without overpowering the spirit of the farmhouse. So when I opened her pictures, I was like, holy cow, this is a beautiful house. Like, this is the not the main house. Wild. Like, the guy that made roller skates, really had it going for him. I mean, it's stunning. It's so beautiful. I love the windows. I love the shape. I love all the things. I absolutely loved the flowers. I love your house. I love it. I really, truly do. So looking on the inside, I see what you mean. It's like this long chute. This is not going to be the right term to use, but think of like a barn when you walk into it, and it kind of has the shape, the ceiling, goes up similar to ours in our house too. And it goes up to that 15 feet. You know how when you walk in, it's just like a long chute. The barn has like just like a long opening. That's what this gives me. And the first thing I did notice is that the fireplace, the whole fireplace situation is off center. And I'm like, oh, it's that, like, things that aren't balanced. But that's why we love old homes. It's because they're always going to be quirky. There's always going to be this sense of like nothing's perfect. Like, in the cottage, I remember all of the windows and the doors were all different heights. Add-ons, additions that have been made, over the years, and like changes of materials. That's why we love old homes, because it's so interesting and they're so different. It's not so planned and perfect. In this situation, the fireplace is offset, but then it has a window on one side and a door on the other. It goes up 15 feet and it has this angled, kind of like vaulted cathedral kind of ceiling that's chopped at the top, very similar to ours. And the reason that we continued this look in our home is because it works so great to run the AC, the electrical, like it doesn't go to a solid peak, like a point, like a peak. She's got her living room area and also a dining room area, all kind of in the same room together, but it's so large that there's a lot of space in between each of these areas. I love your couch. I don't see a problem with it at all. But I see what you mean. The love sack, so you can kind of configure any way you want to. I did think like if you wanted to create more of a separation, because you do have so much room, you could put more seating by bringing in like chairs or something like that. Keep your couch, but have the back of it facing the dining room area to further separate the two spaces, because it's so large. I think that would be my gut instinct, although that's also what I did in the cottage to separate the entryway from the living room as well. You talked about curtains, and although the 15 feet, I think the 15 feet is in the center of the room. If not, you got really, really tall ceilings. But if 15 feet is in the center of the room where the vault goes up, I would only naturally do curtains up to where you have the crown molding above the windows. So you wouldn't have like crazy amounts of fabric or super tall curtains, but it really would. I agree. It would warm up the space totally. I would totally add them on both sides. You would have to figure out what to do with the fireplace wall in terms of curtains, because you've got a door on the other side. Honestly, I think adding the curtains would kind of camouflage the fact that it's kind of off. So I would do curtains on all the windows. I wouldn't do any shades unless you need the privacy. I think your windows are beautiful because you have the transom windows above some of them on the left side, but I would just do curtains on the side, like hang a bar, a curtain rod, and then put the curtains on each side for sure. I also love your floors, but I see what you mean. It's not giving 1936, it's giving 2000s. I totally understand what you mean. We have beadboard ceilings in the cottage, and for any of you guys that don't know, a beadboard is tongue and groove wood that's put together that actually has a bead down the center of the piece, and it adds a lot of texture to it. When it's up so high, it can get kind of like mist. We did beadboard ceilings in our cottage because it already had them in portions, so we were continuing the look, and ours were at 12 feet. And I will say, you do feel them, like you do see them. And I do think that it added a lot of texture in the space and a lot of interest. What I do think it would help with was break up the 2000s look for you. It will be an undertaking because it's up so high. You'd have to rent scaffolding. You could also not do the individual pieces. You could do the sheets of it. And honestly, in such a big space, I would do the individual pieces because you'll be able to feather the pieces in together. So it looks better. I would also probably do the flat part of the ceiling and also come down on the sides, like the two sides. I would do it. And I think it would make more sense with, like the crown molding that's coming. I don't know if you have lighting in there or running any cords in there at all, but I think it could be a really cool look. I think if you follow, without knowing too much about your style, although you like some of the similar things that I do, look for some inspiration pictures that you absolutely love, and if all of them have like warmer wall colors, even if it's just kind of like an off-white, like how we have in our room, it will add so much warmth and make it so cozy. I honestly would recommend not doing the lime wash. I did like the lime wash, and I did do it myself, so it was worth it. I also made it myself, so I didn't even buy an expensive material, but I don't really think that it gave me the look that I absolutely wanted. I do love it. I kind of wish it was more, like I saw the texture even more, but I do like your thought process of doing something on that focal point. So start with your inspiration and kind of follow these like steps. And I think it's going to put you in a much closer place to like pick materials. I totally love like going a little bit warmer on the walls, but keeping the darker furniture. I don't know if you're married to your specific tone of wood for your dining room table. It's throwing like a yellow undertone in the wood, maybe even doing like a warmer wood, bringing in warmer wood instead of like the black and yellow toned wood table. you could like just strip it and stain it a darker wood color and use your same table, you know? Going through your inspiration pictures, I think you'll be able to dissect the difference of materials that you really gravitate towards naturally and be able to incorporate them into your own space for sure. Overall, your house is so beautiful. I think if you bring back in some of that character that you really want, I think it's going to be like stunning. Like I love it. I love that it's all open too, but your kitchen is kind of tucked to the side. Really, really love it. Second design dilemma is from Marta. She sent in, she goes, how to choose a style and color palette when you have limited elements. I'm making over an older apartment that belongs to my family in order to rent it to temporary tenants, 6 months to a year. I'm trying to keep things as cheap as possible and to minimize the amount of work that would be required from my side. At the same time, I would like to incorporate elements with character, and I'm trying to make it feel like a welcoming place and not just a white box. Aren't we all? We're all trying to make them not white boxes, but still keeping it somewhat light and neutral. I'm finding it hard to pick a color palette and bring my own style into the place because of the very limited floors and doors. Those two elements will stay. They are extremely good quality and in very good shape, and I don't have the budget, the time, or the will to work on any of those. Okay, the floors are Spanish red marble combined with the same color terrazzo in some rooms. The wooden doors are mahogany. Some of them have glass panels in order to let in more light in the further you go into the apartment. If it was me staying in the apartment, I would probably get the doors professionally painted in a warm white beigey color with some calm undertones. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The walls are white, and after a fresh coat of paint, they'll be a warm off-white. Okay, so you're painting the walls a warm off-white. I would like to add some color to the apartment to make it fun and lively and a bit more youthful maybe, but adult at the same time. I really like the Mediterranean style with lots of natural fibers and organic materials. I'm torn between two options. Should I fully go for a more simple Mediterranean style with a lighter and more neutral palette, focusing on textiles, fibers, and organic materials? Or should I play with the floors and the doors and incorporate color like mustard yellow and cobalt blue, shooting for a primary color combination? This will make the apartment feel more fun and youthful, I feel like, maybe more attractive to potential tenants, aiming for young professionals here, not students. I looked at the pictures, and maybe it's just me, but I love the floors and the doors. I know what you mean though, especially if you're in a place where this is really common. These are not desirable elements for you, but for someone that doesn't have red marble floors accessible or like in places, or like the terrazzo being the same color, the mahogany doors, I love it. I know that you're talking about like a temporary tenants, like, you know, like 6 months to a year. When I had originally read it, I thought maybe like a temporary rental, like an Airbnb, which you could do in the future. You were also adding decor elements and things to the space. So my brain went to Airbnb, Verbo kind of things, where you would have furniture and things for your tenants that stay there. So since you are giving the furniture and you're putting things on the wall, you're already decorating the space. I say embrace it. If you're going down the route of like an Airbnb type route, I love staying in Airbnbs for their authenticity. I specifically look for Airbnbs that are authentic to the place that I'm going. I want interest in character and to be immersed in the culture and the experience. So I know that you said that this is going to be for a little bit longer. So these are probably already people that are living there, like young professionals, like working there kind of thing. I love that you have to embrace these materials. Truly, I absolutely love the marble floors and the mahogany doors. I wouldn't paint on over them at all. I'd keep them original. But again, I'm a little bit of a purist in that sense. Like, I love to keep things that are original. I say you lean into anything that is authentic to the area. I like your idea of leaning into the more like Mediterranean side. What scares me about picking the pop of color and being more fun like that, I think it will limit the people that will want to rent the space, because they're going to be looking at these like bright colors for 6 months, a year, however long they're going to live there. I think it will limit the pool of people that will love it. I don't think just because it's color and it feels more youthful, it's more desirable to everybody. But then again, you're asking me. I am not a colorful like person like that. I think if I was looking for places to live, that would be kind of a turn off thing for me. But then again, I'm not sure where you are. There's definitely a huge group of people that love color and love that. No matter if you're furnishing it or not, people are going to bring in their own elements. That could be harder for them to do with the more bold you take the color palette and the more things that you kind of like decide on for the space. I think doing a really beautiful light and airy Mediterranean look will not only complement what you've already got in there, but also make it kind of more universally liked by people. And I think you'd have much more people that will want to rent a space like that feels classy and elevated than a space that has lots of color that feels more youthful and young. I think it will go more student, like dorm kind of like living instead of like young professionals. I feel like the light and airy Mediterranean just has such a luxurious kind of like look to it and vibe, and it's going to work so well with your materials. That's the direction that I would go 1000%. And I don't think you ever need to change the floors or you don't ever need to change the doors at all. But having that warm white, like off-white color that you say that you're going to paint the walls for sure, and bringing in more Mediterranean pieces, you kind of have to play it safe. You want things that are durable because you're going to have tenants in and out of there. Things are going to get a lot of use. So definitely pick furniture that isn't super light in color so that it lasts a long time. You don't have to change it out all the time or deal with, like things on it, like having to like clean out stains and things like that. And definitely bring in some of like decor pieces that you were talking about that fit that style. That's the direction that I would go. Or you could always change it up later on too, like if you go a couple of years like this with playing it kind of safe and more classy, then make it more fun and youthful. You never know like what you can really do. And if you ever do Airbnbs, I would keep it so true to like take inspiration from your area and bring those elements in and make it feel so authentic, because I know that I'm not alone in picking those particular Airbnb places, because every time I have like searched for them, I've wanted to stay places that are so beautiful, that are always booked solid, so like something that I'm looking for, and like the authenticity of a place goes so far. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope this helped you in picking materials and finishes and making those decisions for your home. If you follow those tips, you'll be so much closer to where you need to be in terms of picking them. But just know, whatever you pick, you're still going to second guess until it all comes together. So give yourself some grace, and don't be scared to try. Don't be scared to experiment with things that you can experiment with. I always love experimenting with paint because it's just paint and I can buy another gallon of paint and paint the room myself. I always love to experiment with different decor pieces that I can return, so in the areas and the things that you can kind of experiment with, do it. Because it's going to make you feel more confident in the ones that you do pick and the pieces that you do pick. Still send in all of your design dilemmas and your topic ideas to me on the forum. I will put it in the show notes so that you can click and add your pictures and send me any ideas that you have or your design dilemmas that I add into every episode. I love looking at your guys' homes and just helping in any way that I can. And don't forget to follow along on my renovation journey of our kitchen. We are very much I think we probably have a few weeks left of finishing touches, and we're going to be like done. And then I can go in and kind of do my thing, decorate, stuff like that. So follow along on YouTube. I will leave it linked as well so that you guys can catch up, because I think we're on like episode 6 or 7 over there of completely gutting and renovating our kitchen. So come check me out over there. Definitely follow along on the YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you know when I upload new videos. And if you're following on audio only, you can definitely check out the YouTube video to see any of the pictures that I was talking about today, and follow along and leave a review. It helps the podcast so much. And I will see you guys again in 2 Wednesdays. Bye, guys.